So, hello everyone, this is Siddharth Satyarthi from the Coding Zen Institute, and we're going to make a little game, a 2D game in the Unity game engine, and we're going to look at the how to code, I'll be explaining all the coding details, and so on and so forth. Also, each and every concept that is new to you or you're hearing for the first time will be explained in detail by me, so I hope you enjoy it. Let's head right into the Unity. So, moving on, let's go and download Unity. So, what are the prerequisites? So if I have to type Unity, okay, so yeah, Unity real and all that stuff. So this is the first link, Unity Store, download the Unity stuff, okay, and this is where you get started. So first of all, you have to download Unity Hub. Then if you download Unity Hub, this will look something like this. I have lots of projects here. You will be having none for now. So yeah, so this is the first project. Then go to the installs panel. Before that, go to the settings, make a custom path for yourself, and there are like license management. So you can activate a new license. Mine is already activated, as you can see. So there is like you have to make a personal login ID for yourself on Unity. So there are multiple licenses. If I have to show you, okay, so license for Unity. Yeah, so there are like multiple licenses. So you have a personal, we have a plus, we have a pro, we have an enterprise. So the remaining three are for like the higher companies. The ones who are individual developers like you and me, we go for the personal development, right? So yeah, we have all the stuff majorly available except for the cloud diagnostic and high-end art asset pack. But yeah, if you want that, you can get it. It's nothing like specific. There's no technical support, but yeah, all the answers are available if you Google it correctly. That's all for the planning. Then go to the installs, click on add, and go to the LTS version. Click on next, download Microsoft Visual Studio along with it. This is the basically IDE that we'll be using for the coding purposes. So yeah, hit check on this, and then if you click on next, it will ask for an agreement. Check here, done, and it should get started. So like the total space is 9.5 gigabytes. It's going to take its time, but once it's done, go to the project. So I have made a few projects already, but yours will be completely empty. So if I have to open a project, I'll show you what we're going to make this in the tutorial. So if I have to go and give you a reference, yeah, as you can see, the project is loading. It's going to take its time. The time is somewhere between a minute to 5 minutes, depending upon how much load is there in the project. So in the meantime, let's load another project on which we'll be working, because like there are two projects currently, one which I have to show and one which will be in the recording. Okay, also to make a new project, if I have to show you how to make a new project, while in the meantime that the project is loading, to make a new project, you have to click on new. So there are multiple options. You can declare a name here, you can declare a path here. Again, there are 2D, 3D, high definition RP, universal render pipeline, and multiple options. So for this project, what we're going to do is we're going to get on 2D and name this project as Super Hexagon, right? So this is the name of a project that we're going to make. So if I have to show you what is happening, it should load in a while. Moving on, when you once open up the Unity, your background will look something like this. Like mine is in darker color, yours will be in lighter. Let's see what are the things that we have. So I'm going to use annotated to mention all the stuff around. Okay. So the first thing is this scene window. Okay, the scene window. So what does the scene window does? Let's suppose you have a level. Let's say you have a Mario, or it's any platformer game. Platformer games are the games in which you have a starting point. Let's say this is start. Okay, and you have an ending point. Let's say this is end, and you have multiple stuff to do in between. Like let's say A, B, C, D, and so on. And the camera moves along with you. Like in the Mario, if you have seen, the camera moves along, or in any other platformer that you might have seen, the camera moves along. So like, yeah, you cannot see the things past the camera. You cannot see the ahead of the camera. The things that are only visible are inside the camera, right? So these are the platformer games. So let's suppose you have a platformer game, or you have a scene too big that cannot fit inside the camera. So this is where the scene window comes in to manage all the stuff. Okay. Yeah, then moving on, this is the game window. This is where like the whatever you put on the camera, everything is visible. Like as you can see, this has resize, so this is actually on the size of the game. This is the game window where the actual game works. This is the scene window. This is the hierarchy. As I told you about the platformer games, let's suppose I have hundred of objects, right? It can be anything. It can be enemy, obstacles, blocks, anything. It can be anything out of these. So all the things that are required by the game and for the current level goes in the hierarchy. Like everything that I want goes in the hierarchy. So this sample scene is like a level. If you have multiple levels in a game, there would be multiple scenes. Then we have the inspector. What is the use of the inspector? Inspector gives detail about each of the element that is present in the hierarchy. Let's suppose I click on the main camera, so you can see the inspector is filled up with quite some values, right? So because it's a game engine, so everything will have a transform of its own. It's like, okay, what's a transform? If you talk about transform is nothing but like the 3D positioning, okay? 3D positioning of a character. Right now it's a 2D game, so like one of the axis value will be always to 0. Let's suppose this is the Z axis, so it's going to be always tending to 0. Okay, and we are only going to move around in these two axes, which is the X and Y. So all the components in the game are going to have a transform. Then they're going to have some properties specific to their own parts. Like this is a camera, so this has a camera, like camera property. Like so, if I make a game object, then it will have some certain game objects property, and so on and so forth. Then we have this project window. Okay, so this window, the project window. This is the project window. This is where all the stuff goes in. Let's suppose I have multiple levels, so they all goes in scenes folder. I'll make another folder for my scripts where all the coding will go. Let's say scripts, right? Where all the coding will go. Let's say I have some colors to give, so let's say some colors. So that will go in another folder. So scripts is basically nothing but the coding part. So if I have to simplify that, coding. Yeah, so there's the colors and there are much more things that goes inside that are very term specific and will come once we discuss them. This is basic view of Unity Game Engine. Moving on, we have these 6 parts, out of which the last one is useless. So we're gonna leave that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we have 6 of these guys. Let's talk about them one by one. So this hand is the pan tool, which helps you to pan around stuff if you want to move here and here in any direction. This helps to pan around. This is the move tool. Okay, move tool. So let's suppose I have an object in this scene. Let's say this is a square in my object. If I want to move this object around, then I can move it around using the move tool. Then this is the rotate tool. So this is the rotate tool. Again, I have a cube and I want to rotate it in the maybe on the x-axis or on the z-axis or on the y-axis. Of any of the 3 axes, I can rotate it. Same for the move, but like because it's a 2D game, so the depth will be not necessary. And moving on, this is the scale tool. So what the scale tool does, it's help you to scale up objects if you want to change its size to this or maybe a bigger square, anything you want. Okay, it can be bigger, it can be smaller. So yeah, this like it is generally scaling. I'll just demonstrate each one of them. Okay, and this last tool is like doing all the 3 stuffs together, right? So if I have to show you another thing to keep in mind, 2 things. First, these 3 buttons. This is the play button. Whenever you have to test your game, you click on the play button. If you think you want to go and pause the game while it's running, then this is the pause button. And this is the forward button. So this is the forward button to move 1 frame ahead. 1 frame ahead. So okay, another thing to notice is in the hierarchy, every object that is being placed is unique, right? And all the objects are called as game objects. Why are we calling them game objects? Because all these objects are being used inside the game currently. So this is why we call them game objects. So let me demonstrate these tools. If I click on the pan tool, you can see this hand is in the scene window, and I can pan around as in the X direction, in the Y direction as well as I want. Okay, then I go right click on the hierarchy and go to 2G objects, sprite, and I create a square. That's just like I thought about. Right, if I double click on this, you see it zoomed in. If I press Alt and left mouse button, I can zoom out. Sorry, the right mouse button, I can zoom out. And Control, or it can be done by scroll wheel. So moving on, this is the to move tool like I talked about. So you can see this. I can move in the x-axis, on the y-axis. Okay, in the rotate tool, you can see like I can rotate around in z-axis, okay, or in the x-axis, or in the y-axis. So yeah. Then moving on to the scale part. Okay, so you can see this, like every component has a transform, as I talked about, right? So every component has this, every game object has this. Then this has a sprite renderer. The camera had a camera property. So these are all the unique properties that are unique to all the game objects. So let's reset this. Click on these three dots, reset. Yeah, so this is the reset. If I have to scale, so if I push this red dot, so it can move in the X scale. If I have to move in the green dot, it can move in the Y scale. What if I want to scale uniformly? So if I zoom in, let's change the color. So for changing the color, you can go and change the color to the black. So you can see this white dot in the center. If you want to scale it uniformly, let's suppose I want to scale it uniformly and let's reset it. Let's reset it and I want to scale it uniformly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pick the center one and go to the, and I can drag it out or in depending upon how big or how small I want. Okay, then talking about this one. So as you can see, it is all in one. So this is how I scale, how I rotate, and how I move. So this is an all-in-one tool, which is handy to some extent, but yeah, everything in the Unity is draggable, snappable, and droppable. What I mean by that, if I want a game and scene view to be side by side, I can just click on this, drag it out, and place it right beside my scene window. So now whatever work I'm doing on the scene window is visible on the game window. Similarly, this is the hierarchy. It can be dragged. This is the project, the console, the inspector. So yeah, this is how I usually place my Unity when I work one. Okay, so as you can see, a few things. Note the aspect ratio is 16:9 for the big PCs. So moving on. This is the console panel. What a console panel does, console panels work as a output panel for all the errors that you have, right? So if you don't have any errors, the console panel will stay clear, just like this one. Or if you have any error, it will pop up right here. Okay. So yeah, now let's head on to the game that we're gonna make. So this is the game. So what's the main purpose of the game, right? So why are we building this game? So this is only a prototype level game. You can expand it further depending upon how you want to expand it. So this is only the prototype level, just to make the things understand and how the basic works. So if I hit play, you can see the game is like the scene will load and the game will start working. So what's the game about? The game is about the player who can move around, okay, around the center, this black center, and you have to escape these hexagons without touching any of the hexagons, right? So if I have to move, as you can see, it's a quite difficult game. It might seem easy, but yeah, it's quite difficult. What are the add-ons or what are the implementations or implications or whatever you want to do? So you can add a score, maybe different shapes, maybe make it a proper game, right? Yeah. So this all will be learning in the depth when you join the course. That's it. So this is the game that we're gonna make today. So so let's get started. So we have the main camera. We don't have to do anything with the main camera. Then let's create a 2D object sprite circle and name it center. Then let head there, because you can see the position values are different. So let's click on the reset. Okay, double click and you see it's zoomed in. So I'm going to change the color to completely black and maybe decrease the opacity, divide by 4. So yeah, it decreases the opacity already to 64. Now change the scale to maybe 0.8, 0.8, 0.8. Yeah, so this is the scale. As you can see, it's shrunk down a little bit. Like let's say 1 was this big, so this is 1, so this is 0.8. It shrunk down 0.2 value, 0.2, right? I'll be using annotate a lot to describe all the stuff. So yeah, moving on, this is the center. Then right click, 2D object. Let's make another circle and name it player. Okay, now change the scale to 0.2, 0.2, 0.2. As you can see, 0.2 is very much smaller than 0.8. So this is our player, which is going to be positioned at y 0.6. Okay, if I change the x values, you can see the x value of the transform get changed. If I change the y values, the y value of the transform get changed. and the Z will have no effect even if I change it because of the depth. Okay, yeah. So yeah, this is the basic setup. Now moving on, I have to change the background color. As you have seen in the original game, the background color was red. So you can give it any color you want to because there's a like complete color wheel. Maybe a dark reddish. Yeah, so that the eyes don't hurt because that red was quite bright. As you can see, this red is quite bright and it's hurting our eyes. So we don't want to hurt our eyes. So this is so according to that, I have to change the color of the center. Let's make it somewhat blue. No, let's pump up the alpha, like divide by 2, then try green, blue maybe. This one looks good. Cool enough. Okay. So yeah, this is the basic setup. So the next step is right click effect and click on line, right? So as you can see, so line has it's a component for itself that is a line renderer. So what is a line renderer? Line renderer is nothing but line render as the word specifies. But what exactly it is, if I make 2 points, right? Let's say this is point A and this is point B, right? So it creates a line between these 2 points. And for this line, I can declare its thickness, color. Okay, even if I add some more points, then I can declare its shape. Okay, so yeah, like you saw the hexagon in the original game, right? So if I have to play the original game once again for the reference, right? Yeah. So you can see these hexagons that are being getting spawned again and again, right? So these are all nothing but the line renders. As you can see, there are 2 points A and B, and the multiple points in between to change the shape, right? This is how it's working. So let's go on the line and name it hexagon. So how to name it? Naming can be done in 2 ways. One, F2 here, press the F2 key, or change it directly by this, or you can right click and rename by the traditional format. So I'm going to do the F2 and name it hexagon. Let's see what are the positions for the line render on the hexagon. Right, yeah. So let's say these are the positions. So our hexagon has 6 sides, obviously, right? And all the z-axis are the 0. You can see a little line forming out. Maybe not anymore. So yeah, let's go and make a negative 0.5, negative 0.8. Oh no, it's positive 0.8, right? So you can see like this is the very first point, which is negative 0.5 and 0.8, right? So if I have to point it out, let's say this point, this is x is 0.1, 0.5 minus, and y is 0.8 plus, right? And this is obviously the center, so x is 0 and y is also 0. Cool. So this is how a line is getting formed in between. So yeah, then if I have to move on, so negative 0.95 and this is 0, then this is negative 0.5, negative 0.8. So now you can see this, like as I put on the positions, these the shapes get forming. Like this is a hexagon if I have to specify with one open side as shown in the game, right? So then we have 0.5, negative 0.8, then we have negative or 0.95 and 0 and 0.5, 0.8. Cool enough. So yeah, this is a proper hexagon. And if I have to change the color for this, let's see. Okay, so this is another type of color. This is a gradient color. You can choose between any gradient, right? I cannot annotate it on this, but you can see this is the first key where the mouse is, right? So if I click on the first key and click on the color, I can choose any color that I want to, and you can see a gradient is starting appearing. And if I click on the second key and click any color, so you can see this. Okay, so for now the colors are way too matching, so let's change them a little bit and let's make it a bit obvious colors, or yeah. These are the two gradient points. If you want more, you can add more by just clicking somewhere in the between, like right on the border, and set the value to 25. And then like maybe we'll add one more color. Let's say pink. Oh, no, pink is going too subtle. How about orange? Orange looks good, does it? Okay, we'll see. Okay, let's add one more at the location of 50. And let's make it, let's say proper cyan. Let's add one more at the location of 75. And let's make it proper red. Do we want a proper red? Let's make it a proper yellow. Yellow looks good. So you can see how colorful our hexagon is. So this is the hexagon right now, right? So this will do nothing. So we have to go and add component, and then we have to find out a component by the name of Edge Collider 2D, right? So what does the Edge Collider does? You can see this green line that has just appeared. So this is what the Edge Colliders look like. So what's a collider? Basically, if you have 2 points A and B again, and if something collides on this, so it should be able to detect like what collided on me, or is something collided ever or not. So this is why we are using Edge Collider, because it's on the edges. There are multiple types of collider, like a circle collider, which perfectly fits on the circle. Then there are capsule colliders, which perfectly fits in the capsule. There is a box collider, which perfectly fits on the box, and so much. But like this is a hexagon and this is not any shape, so we're gonna make an edge collider, and we're gonna make sure that it's all on the 5 faces with all the 6 points. So let's define the values, and the values will be the same as this one, the original position. So let's go to the points, change it 6, and let me show you 0. Negative 0.5, 0.8. So you see this, the green line has shifted. Then it is negative 0.95. So you see this green line has come here. Then it's negative 0.5. There's negative 0.8. Now you see there are 3 points done. 0.5, negative 0.8. Now there are 4 points done, although they're subtly matching in the colors. But if I have to zoom in, like super zoom in, you can see the little bit difference. If you can't, I can certainly. So yeah, just trust the process. Then the next is 0.95, 0, and negative, oh no, wait, 0.5, 0.8. Yeah, if you're not sure what the colors is, yeah, let's keep the color this way. Or wait, let's keep it like this so that we have a similarity. Better, I think so. Let's keep green here. Let's delete these oranges. Better. Yeah, now you can see it perfectly how the pretty hexagon looks, right? The edge collider is added to detect all the collisions, or how the collision are detected. Basically, you go into something like this is the person, this is the wall. If you bump into the wall, you detect a collision, right? But how does that work for the game perspective, right? So from the game perspective, let's say you are a person and you have a capsule collider on you, okay, and this is the wall. This wall has a cube collider on it, and when you both collide, technically these two colliders collide with each other, and then the collision is detected. So this is how the things work in the game world. So the hexagon collider is done. Now what did I said on the player? Let's add a component of circle collider 2D, because it's a 2D game, so we need a circle collider. If I zoom in on the player, you can see that there's a line like the green radius and a green outline on the player, right? So yeah, then we have to add a rigid body. We cannot add rigid body. We need to add a rigid body 2D, because again it's a 2D game. Okay, so what is a rigid body 2D, you may ask? So for the simpler definitions, simpler explanations and all that stuff, let's go to the official definition of rigid bodies. If I have to conclude it in a single line, rigid body helps you to control the object position through physics simulation, right? So what do I mean by physics simulation? You can say that, let's suppose I want to apply speed to this body, right? Let's say speed to this body, or I want to apply velocity, or I want to apply acceleration, I want to apply gravity, or any such things that require intense physics calculations or intensive physics calculations, or physics simulations. For all these tasks, we use rigid body. So moving on, change the body type from dynamic to kinematic so that it does not fall off. So if I have to show you what a dynamic does, dynamic adds the gravity. We don't want the gravity because it's a 2D game. So the falling of the ball will not be appreciated in any game. So if I have to show, you can see the ball is falling and it stopped at the bottom of the hexagon, right? Because there was a collider being detected, right? So this is the collider in the center and the ball was being detected. So we don't want that. So let's go back to the player and change the body type from dynamic to kinematic. So now when we hit play, you can see the ball stays in this position, right? The gravity is not being applied so much. Only the gravity aspect has been changed. You can still move it around, still apply speed, velocity, acceleration, but yeah, just the gravity part is turned off. The basics are done, the visuals are almost done, right? So complete the visuals. Let's make a prefab folder. Okay, so how to make a new folder? Go to the assets, right click, create, and top is the option is the folder. Okay, we're gonna name it prefabs, right? Again, for the prefabs, I'm gonna go for official definition. Prefab system allows you to create, configure, and store a game object, complete with all of its component property values as a reusable asset, right? In this original game, you saw the hexagon was spawning again and again, right? So how are we spawning the hexagon again and again? By using the prefabs. So while using the prefabs, as you can see, like we can spawn the hexagons again and again. Okay, let's suppose I have multiple hexagons, right? So multiple hexagons need to have almost same values each and every time, which are being changed by the code. So we don't want that. What we want is to work it perfectly fine and to reuse it again and again on an instance. So to do that, we make a prefab out of any object that is needed to be used again and again in a game. So yeah, moving on, in the hexagon, go to the line render option, and in the width panel right here, change this width to 0.20. As you can see, the hexagon is quite thin, and in the original game it was quite thick. So let's change it to 0.20. Yeah, now it's a perfect thickness. Yeah. Okay. Also for the hexagon, let's see. So this is how the prefab works. So in the prefabs, drag and drop a hexagon. So how to make a prefab? In the hierarchy, click on any game object you want to make a prefab of. Click that object. Like let's suppose I want to make a prefab of a hexagon. So click that and drag and drop in the hierarchy. You can see this little blue cube formed and this little blue cube formed, right? So this is the indication of a prefab. So now we can delete this and let's work on our player, right? So the next step is to make the player move, right? So let's create a folder to save all our scripts. So let's make a folder named by scripts. Okay, then right click, create C# script, and let's name it player, right? So double click on this. I'm going to take its time to open up in the Visual Studio. This is how the Visual Studio code will look. Again, you have to sign in this. I have already done my sign up. So there are two basic functions for every game in the Unity that will be provided to you by default, right? So the first is the start function and the second is update function. So let's talk about the start function as the first. So start function. It runs at least once at the very beginning. So what do I mean by this? Whenever I hit that play button, the start function get executed. Second function, that is the update function. Update functions run every frame. Let's suppose I have currently 60 FPS. Okay, most of the PCs are on the 60 FPS. So update function will run 60 times. Okay, let's suppose some of you have higher FPS. Let's suppose 120 FPS. So FPS will run, like the update function will run 120 times. Okay, so there are ways to make out for the difference that number of times the function runs. But yeah, those are to be talked in the further details. Yeah, so this is what the basics is. Let's move forward. So, okay, so let's delete all the stuff because we're going to write the code from the scratch. So let's make a public So what is a public? Public is nothing but a data type that is available to each and everyone who is referencing to this script. Like just like the public value. So this is just like you are available to the public. This is the same public. Okay, then go to the float. Then we have public float, and the variable name is move speed. We're declaring it to the value of 500f. Okay, so why the f? This is again the float uses f, decimal uses d, no, decimal uses m, and double uses d in C sharp. Again, the Unity uses C sharp coding language, so yeah, be very careful about that. Then we're going to make another variable which is going to be private this time. So private float movement. So what I mean private, like you have two types of life, which is one is a public life, one is a private life, which one you keep to yourself, one you share with others. So you can think of these as the same way. The public float can be shared with anyone who is accessing the player script, and the private float will not be accessed by anyone. Now we have private void update. Again, we're calling this update function, right? So yeah, so we're gonna go transform dot rotate around vector 3.0 vector 3 dot forward movement into time dot fixed delta time. Oh wait, into negative of move speed, right? So let's say private void update. Okay, and this is going to be fixed update, right? Right, and here is going to be the movement is equals to input dot get access horizontal. Are the spellings correct? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So yeah, so I wrote two codes, two functions, and two lines. Yeah. So it's like kind of confusing. So let me explain one by one. So as I told you earlier, update is the function that runs every frame, right? So what are we doing? There are two type of axis. One is the vertical axis or the y-axis, and one is the horizontal axis and the x-axis, which are already mapped to their corresponding binding keys in the Unity game engine for every gaming console. Like Unity is basically used to make all types of games such as Xbox, PS, mobile, phones such as Android, iOS, right? PC games. So you can make all these games using Unity game engine. So horizontal is setting the default values. Like let's say I have a joystick and moving here and here changes the player. So horizontal is already set to default for this value. For the keyboard, it's already set to left and right arrows keys or A and D, right? So yeah, so that's how it works. So the horizontal is basically default mapping, and we're getting the axis horizontal. So we're getting the axis X. Then again, so let's move forward. What is the fix update? Fix update is used for physics update. What do I mean by physics update and normal update? So yeah, normal update runs every time, every single frame, right? So let's say this you are having 60 FPS, so it's gonna run 60 times. Okay. So if someone with a higher FPS will have a proper gameplay, but what the fix update does is fix update is for physics checking, right? So I have to give you example or difference of example between update or fix update. Let's suppose I have a bank one, okay, which gives me $1 every time I go inside. I have a bank two, one bank, two bank, which give me $2 every time I go in, and I have a bank three, which give me $3 every time I go in, right? So you can think of update in this way, like there are three different PCs, so we'll have three different type of output. Let's say this is 60 frames per second, this is 240 frames per second, and this guy is 144 frames per second. So yeah, all of these guys are having different updates. So this will be 60 updates, this will be 240, this will be 144. But what does a fixed update does? No matter which bank I go to, let's suppose it's one bank, it's two bank, or it's a three bank. all I'm getting when I go in is a $5 irrespective. Okay, so this is what how fixed update looks like. So I'll get $5 output constantly for all the physics updates. Yeah, so if I have to now see what the code is doing, so to look at that, let's head back to Unity, wait for the script to compile up. Now, there are three ways to add a script to our player game object. First is drag and drop directly on the player, it's going to get attached. Second, drag and drop at the bottom. You can see this is the bottom, right? You can drag and drop here, then it will attach. Or the last option is add component by searching player. You see this player, and I have added the player script, right? So yeah, let's hit play now. So now what should we able to do is we can move around, right? As you can see, we are able to move around as much as we want, right? It's totally free, but depending upon this is the D key that I'm pressing right now, and this is the A key that I'm pressing right now, right? So I can move around. So let's move forward, and wait a second. If I have to remove this component and then hit play, is it working fine? Yeah, it's totally working fine. So it looks like the rigid body is not created because we're not doing any like physics simulation, such as we're not changing the velocity, it's moving with a constant speed force, right? So yeah, like once the speed is applied, there's no velocity being added, no deceleration, no acceleration, no gravitation. Okay, so no physics simulation is being done, so we don't need a rigid body for this. So yeah, okay, so this was for the player. Now let's move on. So now we're gonna need and create an empty game object and name it spawner so that we can spawn our hexagons, right? We want to spawn our hexagons as we play, because if there's nothing to avoid, then what we're gonna play on, right? So let's go to the scripts and create a C# script and name it spawner. Okay, let's wait for the script to compile up. Okay, let's head back to this is the spawner script that we have. So this is spawner script. Again, we're going to delete everything because we're going to code from scratch. Yeah, so let's go and say public float. Again, the public is same, right? So we're going to go with the spawn rate, how frequently you want to spawn them. Then go with the public game object. As I told you, everything is a game object in the hierarchy. So yeah, hexagon prefab. So here we're going to reference the prefab. Then we're going to go private float, and we're going to name this variable next time to spawn. Okay, for this we are using camel casing for the variable naming, so yeah, keep that in mind. And now let's go and make a private void update, and if time.time is greater or equal to next time to spawn, then what we want is instantiate hexagon prefab vector 3.0 and quaternion dot identity. Then the last thing is last thing to declare is next time to spawn is equals to time.time divided by plus 1f upon spawn rate. Okay, so what is happening in this part? Let's go line by line. So we're gonna have a variable name of spawn rate. Okay, so how fast you want to spawn, which is declared to 1f. Okay, then we have a hexagon prefab, the prefab that we made of our hexagon, right? With one side open. So this is how I declare one side open. Cool. Then there is a private float, which is next time to spawn. So in what duration should the next be spawned, right? It is how fast to spawn, and this is next to spawn, right? So there's a little bit difference. So moving on, we have update. Again, it's run every frame. So we're checking if time dot time. What is time dot time? time is running every second when you hit the play button. So time.time gets exactly the amount of seconds after the button click has been done. So we're checking it. Time.time is greater than equal to next time to spawn is greater than this variable. Then we're going to do this stuff. Otherwise, we're going to do nothing. Right. So the thing says instantiate. So what does instantiate means? As the word suggests, it's about to instantiate something, right? It is taking three parameters along with it, which are the game object, which needs to be instantiated, game object, which needs to be instantiated, the position of it, okay, where it should be instantiated, where the center should lie, and quaternion or identity, right? The question in your mind is what is vector 3, right? In the previous script also we declared some stuff and I haven't explained this, I guess. So yeah, so what is vector 3? Let's see. Let's suppose I have this axis. This is a 2D axis, x and y, right? I need to travel from point A to point B, right? Let's say point A is declared by x1, y1, and point B is declared by x2, y2, right? So the shortest distance that is being represented by an arrow is called as a vector. So this AB arrow is called as a vector. Vector is nothing but a direction, right? So what is the direction? So now therefore, like, okay, for the real world, we know what is 2D, what is 3D, but the computer does not know. So we have two type of vector. One is vector 2 for the 2D planes and one is vector 3 for the 3D planes, right? So this is the 3D plane. Let's say y, x, z. So if I say vector 3.0, it means stay at the center with no position to go on. The direction is 0, right? Okay, so by default, the forward is set to z. Okay, the right is set to x and up is set to y. By default, these are the values set in the unity. So vector 3 dot forward. Okay, so again this and dot forward always means 1 unit. Right also means 1 unit. Up also means 1 unit. So yeah, then it is movement into time dot fixed delta time into negative of move speed. So what is this last part? So time dot fixed delta time. This is what helps us to make that bank that I was talking about, which gives out $5 every time I go in, irrespective of the bank name, right? Irrespective of the type of VC, this time dot fixed delta time will fix up my update cycle so that it runs smoothly and constantly on every frame, on every PC, which has different frame values, right? Now this is being getting multiplied by the negative move speed. So for every frame, let's suppose this value for every PC gives us 20, right? And our move speed is, let's say, 10. So this is gonna give 200 in each PC, irrespective of the specifications. Either it's a high-end PC or a low-end PC. So this is what is going on here, and that's how we're able to move. Moving on to the spawner. So we have instantiated the hexagon prefab, the object to be instantiated, the place to be instantiated, and quaternion or identity. So what is a quaternion? Quaternion is a high-level mathematics that is like introduced in India in the level of graduation and further onwards, right? Especially when you're pursuing maths, otherwise it's not, right? So an identity means by the default. Then we're changing the next time to spawn to time.time. Again, this is from the time when we have started the play button, and we are adding one divide by spawn rate. So it's getting added, but it's getting subtracted eventually so that the next time to spawn is reached. So if I go into the Unity and I have to show you what's exactly happening, let's set the spawner, add component, spawner. So you see there are two things. One is spawn rate, one is hexagon prefab. The prefab says none game object. So we have to head back to the assets, go into the prefabs folder, right? And drag this hexagon and drop it on the hexagon prefab selection panel. Okay. So this is how it's gonna work. And if I now hit play, let's see what's happened. You can see it is spawning hexagons on the same place without anything. Like there is no rotation, no getting bigger, no getting smaller, but yeah, the hexagons are getting constantly spawned one upon another, right? So the next step is to make the hexagons rotate. So how we're gonna do this? How we're gonna do this is make another script by the name of hexagon, create script by the name of hexagon, right? And then open it up in Visual Studio, and it compile up and open it up in Visual Studio. So this is our script. Yeah, so we have created our hexagon script. So yeah, let's move on and write the code for the hexagon script. So yeah, again, opening up the hexagon script in the Visual Studio. So we're going to delete this. This is not needed. Yeah, let's move on for the hexagon script. So for this, we need a public rigid body 2D. Yeah, and we'll name it RB. Okay. So again, what is the rigid body? Rigid body is like rigid body 2D is we are accessing the rigid body that was given in the hexagon. Okay. Now we wonder where the hexagon is rigid body in the hexagon. So we have to add that. Let's head back to our game. Okay, let's head back to the prefabs folder. Double click on the hexagon and you'll see like this has changed, and you see this has changed to scene hexagons, and this is autosave is on, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to add rigid body 2D, and again we're going to change it to kinematic so that it does not fall off. Okay, so yeah, this is the rigid body component added, and yeah, so yeah, we're given the access to the rigid body. Okay, what's next? We need to make a public float shrink speed, right? Because as we saw in the original game, it was shrinking. So yeah, now void start. Okay, yeah, private void start. So again, I told you multiple times that start is called once when every time once whenever we play the play button. Okay, when you start the game, the start is being called. So what you have to write is start. Okay, RB dot rotation is equals to random dot range 0 to 360. Okay, and transform dot local scale is equals to vector 3 dot 1 into 10f. So what are these two lines doing? First of all, RB dot rotation. So RB dot rotation stands for the rigid body rotation. So as I told you, whenever you have to apply physics or you want to simulate physics or any of the object, such as rotation is also a part of a physics, right? So we're going to give it a random rotation between 0 to 360. It can be rotated at any certain angles, which can be from 0 to complete 360 at the moment the game starts, right? So what do I mean by start? Every time the object is getting called, like every time the spawner is spawning the hexagon, the start is being called. So that's why we see the random rotations, right? Like this can be like this, can be like this, can be like this. So it totally depends how the rotations are working. Then transform dot local scale. You saw in the game, and when we started, the hexagon shrank down, right? They shrank down from the outside. So initially we are scaling them on the way to big scale, which is 10f. Okay. Okay, this is not a hexagon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, this is 7-sided. Let's undo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, cool. So yeah, this is a hexagon, and you saw that it was way too big and the end where it in the center it collided, it became way too small for the ball to just move out, right? So this is what like it is happening. So we're changing the local scale continuously. Like on the initial when the game starts, like when the object is being called, it is on the 10f scale. Okay. But then we are shrinking it down. How are we shrinking it down? We're shrinking it down in the private void update method. In this method, what we're gonna do is transform.local scale minus equals to vector 3 dot 1 into shrink speed into time dot delta time, and if transform dot local scale dot x is less than equal to 0.05f or is equal to this scale, then we have to destroy. So what is happening actually in this update function? As I told you again, the update is being called every second. So every frame, it is getting transform.local scale. Again, the scale is getting shrinked by how much? Vector 3.1. Okay, so 1 unit into shrink speed, whatever the shrink speed is, which is like let's say 3, and into time dot delta time. What does time dot delta time does? Time dot delta time is helps you to smooth out game for each PC, irrespective of their specs. Okay, so let's again, it helps you to smooth out the stuff, right? If I have to go for the actual definition, I like to show the actual definition if possible. So the actual definition is, let's say, time dot delta time, right? Yeah, so the interval in seconds from the last frame to the current. So this helps to smooth out. This helps you to smooth out your game very drastically, right? So, well, like it for that, it is equal on all the PCs. Okay, then we are going. If the shrink is way too small, like 0.05f, if the shrink is way too small, let's say this is the shrink and it becomes this size, minuscule level, right, which is 0.05f on the scaling sizes, then we have to destroy the game object. Okay, so this is what is happening on the hexagon. So let's head back to the Unity, wait for it to compile. Yeah, so in the hexagon, we're gonna add the component, the script that we just made, that is the hexagon script. Okay, now it is asking for the rigid body. So we have to drag drop the rigid body, right? Drag this rigid body 2D, which was attached on the hexagon, and drop it. And we have all these changes are being made in the prefabs. Okay, if I hit play now, so you can see the hexagons are spawning with a different rotation of their own, right? Also, you can see that the okay after they're reaching the center point, they're getting destroyed after a certain like 0.05 level, and they're getting spawned at the different rotation speed, right? So the game is almost done. The next thing to do is to make the collision detected bit amongst the ball and the hexagon, right? So to do that, we're gonna go in the hexagon prefab itself and check on is trigger. Was it a hexagon? Let me just check. So it's not the hexagon that is trigger. It is the player that is on set on is trigger. So go to the circle collider 2D, check on the is trigger method, right? The is trigger boolean and checkbox it, and yeah. So let's head back to our player script, right? Now what we want to do is want to make a new function here. Let's name it private on trigger enter 2D. It's a predefined function which takes a parameter called as a collider 2D, and the name of the parameter is collision, right? So what do we want to do here is I'm going to lose the console just to show it out what's happening. Debug dot log. Let's write down simple thing as colliding. If I run this now and if I head back to the console and whenever it collided, you can see it's sync colliding, right? It is collapsed for now and you can see it's colliding. Every time it gets collide, it is showing the collision, right? So we can make sure that the collision is happening. Now in the original game, what originally happened was whenever we collided, the scene was getting restarted. Let me show you in the original game. Whenever we got collided, the scene was restarting, right? As you can see, the scene is getting restarted. So let's do that. So what we need here is we need to add on the line number 4, we have to go and slide down using Unity engine dot scene management. Okay, and then inside of debug.log, we have to write one more line, that is scene manager dot load scene manager dot get active scene and build index, and that's all. Okay, so what does this line mean? So scene manager is a predefined library used for managing your scenes such as reload and all that stuff. Okay, so we are loading the scene. The scene to be loaded is specified in the brackets. Okay, so what we're doing is we have to load the scene that is currently active on the build index. Okay, what is the build index? This is something that is to be discussed in much depth and will be told once you join the full course. Yeah. So now if I head back to our original like the game that we were making, if I hit play now, so you can see that I can control the ball, and yeah, it is getting restarted perfectly, right? As soon as I touch the center, but it is way too easy. Like if I have to control it, it is way too easy right now. So let's take it up a notch and let's make another script in the scripts folder. Name it rotator because it's gonna help us rotate the camera. So rotator. Okay, let's head back to Visual Studio for the compilation. Okay, in the rotator, what I want is I want to add uh, some type of rotation, right? I don't need the start method for this. I'm gonna delete the update comment as well, right? Private is here. Let's see, transform dot rotate. Okay, now we're rotating it by vector 3 dot forward. Again, it gives the +1 value in the z direction, right? And it is going by time dot delta time. As I told you, this value is super small, so we're going to multiply it by 30f. If I don't multiply it by 30f, let me show you what's happening. So this rotator script is done. Let's wait it to get compiled and selected. Yeah, so let's head back to the main camera, add the component rotator. And if I hit play now, you see it is rotating, but it's at very small level. Like you can see in the scene view, it was rotating, but it was on the very small scale, right? I have to show you, it is rotating, but it is on the very small scale, right? So we have to multiply it by 30f, which will give us a faster and fast-paced speed for the better play and results, right? So let's multiply it by 30f and let's see what's happening. Okay, again, do not change the any changes during the runtime because then it can get be overridden and you can see there are some errors in the console. Do not worry about these and hit the clear button, right? Okay, so in the console, the errors to worry about are the ones that does not get clear upon pressing the clear button. Then you might have some errors in the code or something that you have written down wrong or gone wrong. So those are the errors that you have to worry about. Otherwise, irrespective of the errors and warnings, just try to hit clear once and see if they're gone, then there's nothing to worry about for now. But there are different type of errors that get worked upon in the basic end. So now you can see that it's very fast paced and this completes our game Super Hexagon. Now we can expand upon this by adding a score and changing the colors and adding a proper menu and all that stuff, right? So this all will be taught by me in the course once you join in, and there will be multiple cool games that we're going to make, and also we're going to make some of your own original ideas, right? So yeah, so that's it from my side, and thank you.